Hey guys, Bart from TST Industries here. I have another episode of TST Garage for you. Here we go. Yamaha XSR700. It needs our Fender Eliminator. Why? Look at this thing. It doesn't match anything on this retro style bike. So we're gonna remedy that in this video via the use of our Elite-1 adjustable Fender Eliminator. This kit was specifically developed for this bike. It does require some modification to the bike. So if you're not comfortable slicing off a piece of plastic and drilling 2 holes, this kit perhaps is not for you. If you are, and you're after that nice sleek look on the tail of your bike, this will really nicely outfit you with a high-class CNC machined aluminum componentry and enable you some adjustability to the angle of your license plate and really enhance the look of your bike. So let's talk about this a little bit. This kit arrives to you not built. You have main components of the kit with the hardware to put it all together. This is the installation hardware that will install this, which is represented here, onto the bike. We also outfit you with some L brackets and all of the hardware needed to install signals onto this bike. The reason why you will need to install different signals on this bike is because if you slice off all of this plastic here, which you will need to for this kit, you will do away with the OEM mounts for these pumpkin guys here, and you'll need something else to mount your signals to. Now, we don't corner you into buying our signals. You can choose any aftermarket signal out there. If you do like what we have to offer, like this nice BL6 signal, at this point in time, it is available in standard and also sequential. We also have ARO18. We have a whole array of different signals that you can choose. You can choose those and mount them on here. It'll be a nice, simple buy for you because you can get everything from one spot. If you do choose signals from us, you can also get the plug-and-play harness kit that has the OEM connector on one side and interfaces with this nice bullet connector set here and is the proper length of wire between the two of these to actually make your connection on this bike. Can't guarantee that about any other brand signals. I can tell you that these will be able to be put on this bike, no problem. We'll actually show you that at the end of this video. These components here are separate. They do not come with the Fender Eliminator. Like I said, we don't want to sort of back you into a wall having to buy all our stuff, but if you do, you can get it all in one spot, get it all connected. We'll show you how to do it in this video. One other issue I didn't talk about yet is the license plate light. We do not show the installation of our license plate light typically because we have a separate video showing that. In this video, I'll quickly run through how to throw it in and I'll connect it, but we won't be getting into the details of that. We have a separate video showing you how to do that. As you could probably tell, I'm really excited to get this done. I want to show you guys what this looks like, so let's get wrenching. With the license plate and the seat already removed, we'll be identifying these 2 components. This forward steel bracket for holding the seat and also this fuse and tool holder. It is kept in place with a series of 4mm Allen head fasteners. We will be removing those and then removing these parts off the bike. If you notice here on this forward component, we have a screw and a washer in each location. I like to keep these fasteners together with the parts that they're used on and separate them from other sets of parts, and that makes reassembly very, very easy. Now, these aft screws here, they are our shoulder type M5 thread, so you definitely want to separate those from the first component we took off. That way you don't have an issue rebuilding this whole setup here. As you remove this, you'll need to pull this fuse off this tab. And that remains in place. And now we can go on to the next step. Here we will need to identify 4 sets of plugs that need to be separated. We have this black and gray one. These are our signals. This additional gray one is the reverse configuration of this one. This will be your license plate light. And this big one, 3-position plug, that's your actual tail light. Let's remove these guys. Pull up on the lock and it slides out. Now this tail light one here. It does have a tab on it that needs to be pressed down. It is fairly hidden away from me right now. I'm going to use a tool to press down on that lock. All right, not too bad. Now that our plugs are loose, we'll make sure that once we get the fender off and unfastened, we'll be able to pull it back and they won't snag anything. I will be grabbing a 5mm Allen key and removing this fastener, this one, and these two in the rear section. They do fasten into another set of fasteners held from the bottom only by a rubber grommet. On the way out, I think they won't pose a challenge to you guys. But on the way back in, they will require the use of another 5mm Allen from the back, from the bottom rather, to make sure that you could tighten them down enough. I start with these forward fasteners, and then as I move to the back, I will start supporting my assembly here. I'll crack them loose first, and then start holding this fender assembly so it doesn't just drop. Now we'll pivot this down and then pull it towards the rear. And as that separates there, the only thing holding it in place are the plugs. So we need to make sure that we haven't snagged anything, and that will permit us to take this off the bike and start working on prepping it for the assembly of our new Fender Eliminator. For the next couple steps, we'll be working on the table, and I've chosen to put down a towel so that as we shift some of the parts around and flip this thing over, we don't mar up any of the parts that are going back on the bike. Let's begin by removing these 5 fasteners using a 4mm Allen. As this comes off, it will take the taillight with it. We can actually put that to the side and get back to it later. Now we will need to remove these 2 Phillips head screws. Once those screws are out, our wiring will be free to come off the fender. And then what I like to do is just retain these routing clips in place so that I don't lose them or misplace them. Take it hang out like that for a while. Now we are ready to think about what comes next. As you can see, this is all one piece. We don't have any other choice other than removing this rear section so that we can mount our Fender Eliminator here and have a nice sleek look to the back of the bike. The templating for where to cut is very, very simple in this particular bike. You have a textured section here, and then there's a smooth section here. The meeting line of those 2 textures will be where we make our cut. Now, here in the corner, the smooth section goes back towards the front of the bike, and we have more textured here. What we'll do is put a straight edge here between the vertex of that cut, where that cut ends, and here, score it and cut along that line. Let me illustrate. So before I score this, I'll make sure that I'm perfectly aligned with the vertex of this meeting line of smooth and textured and this meeting line of smooth and textured. Place a score there. And the score really just has to be representative to you for when you make that cut. It doesn't have to be very deep in. Just need to ensure that it is visible and you can follow it with whatever cutting method you've chosen. We will be using a Dremel type tool. You can do this with hand tools. It is definitely possible to cut this with a hacksaw in a couple setups, but we'll do it in the simplest possible way that we have access to. All right, so we have a score line on this side. We have a score line on this side, and we'll be able to start cutting in just a moment. I think what I'll do is just pull back on these wires and get them out of the way so we don't cut them, and also get rid of this shroud from the inside of the fender so we have a way to cut from the outside and inside. We can pull back on all this stuff here, get it out of the grommet, and now all of our cutting will be done here, here, and here. So pretty much well prepped for that. I'm going to grab a Dremel and show you guys how to do that. So here I have my weapon of choice. It's the disc cutter. That's what I'll be using today. Some other times I may have chosen a rotating file. Any one of these tools will do a good job as long as you don't actually melt the plastic. So the feed rate has to be slow enough that you're grinding it away. Actually, this plastic is fiber-filled nylon. It will melt on you. Always use eye protection. And for those of you guys that are using a hacksaw by hand, the procedure will vary slightly. So you just follow the score lines and everything that we've outlined that we're going to follow, and go ahead and cut. So it's being a little tough in this section here. I'm going to finish it off using a blade. I think I could penetrate in there and just work it across. There it is. Now this chunk comes off. Put that to the side and just focus on this component. Now we did still have some resultant mess here. Grinding away at this plastic does cause it to melt. Can't prevent all the melt, so we have a little bit of slag here. What I'll do is just clean it up with the knife and see if there's any filing needed to neaten it up. Some of this rear edge is going to be visible if you look at the bike very, very closely, so the neatness of how this comes out is really up to you. I like to make my installations look very professional, so I'm going to make sure that I get it very, very cosmetically pleasing before I install it back on the bike. Alright, so what I've done here is I used two different files, one with a round profile and one with a flat profile that's a little bit finer, and worked on this a little bit. And I took the knife and basically ran it along the edges to scrape off any of the curlies that form from filing. I got to this point where I have a nice symmetrical geometry. These edges are flat and straight, and this is nicely curved, and I think we'll get nice hiding from the top component here. And this is looking pretty good. I think I'm happy with this. We can continue with the next portion, which will be the actual installation of our fender eliminator in here, we will have to put 2 holes in this section here. But before I do that, I'm going to quickly reorganize my space here and clean up, and then we'll cut back in. Okay, now we need to provide 2 holes in this section here. This is where we cut off that rear chunk, and there's a grommet here for the wiring. We'll be placing 2 holes in these locations so that we can mount our Elite-1 adjustable fender eliminator there. For templating where to put the holes, we will use the washers on top here. Let them locate in the corners. The outer diameter actually fits really nicely into the fillet between these 2 surfaces. So we will press them up in there and draw a circle inside that hole. Make sure that you don't pop up this surface. Stay flat on the bottom surface. Just butt up against the edge. All right. Let's see how we did. We have 2 circles. We are ready to drill pretty much. Just want to mark the center of them. Now we are using 6mm diameter screws going through a 1/4 inch hole. We're going to end up with a 1/4 inch hole. We're providing a little bit of adjustability so that we don't have to find dead center for these 2 screw holes, and we have some adjustability to make sure that we're still parallel and equidistant to the center plane of this component. I will now drill through the plastic, get some eye protection on, find that center that I just marked, and run my drill bit in and out a little bit by hand before I start. Make sure that it's centered where I want it to be. So what I'm doing first here is I'm using a 1/8 inch drill bit. I'm going to step drill it. This makes it a lot easier to get a precise cut. Swap over to my 1/4 inch. Get that drilled out to 1/4 inch. And now we are ready to start getting our fender eliminator components onto here. We'll be using these 2 screws, these 2 washers from the top, and these 2 hinges from the bottom. For this step, I recommend using some sort of thread locking fluid. I'm going to use blue thread lock on these 2 screws. This ensures that the vibration of the bike doesn't cause the screws to back out from the receiving threads in these hinges, and you won't lose your license plate. All right, so we'll go one at a time. Washer, screw, hinge. I'll just thread it on like this and leave it a little bit loose. We'll talk about the orientation and tightening in just a little bit. Washer, screw, same deal. All right, so essentially, when you tighten this down, you want these hinges to be parallel to each other, equidistant from the center plane of the bike. And also, if you notice here, they do curve up. One edge is flat, leading into this curved surface, and the other one has an indent. You want the indent towards the rear of the bike. I'm going to now grab a 4mm Allen key and a 10mm box wrench. I'm going to hold the hinge, with open-ended wrench that is. I'm going to hold that like so, tighten it down. All right. All right, now let's get all these other components involved, empty out the baggie of hardware, And let's see, we will choose these two L brackets, these two screws that have a button head. We'll also need these two washers. Now, as you can see here, there are a few configurations that you could place these components in. I will prep them like this so that I have an easy time selecting the appropriate component for the appropriate side. We'll place this L bracket on this boss here on the hinge. It actually does have a protruding boss out of this flat surface that interfaces with this hole, keeps it concentric, and makes really nice hinge action. To fasten that down, we will also need thread lock in this position. So apply just a little bit to the threads. Get a washer on there, and let's get that fastened down. All right, just repeat the other side. All right, so when all is said and done here, this is what this configuration should look like. If you're looking at the bike from the side with this mounted up, you have a downward, rearward sloping surface between these two L brackets. This will mount your main license plate mount bracket, and to figure out which hole to put your countersunk screws through, basically put it up to the L brackets and select the proper hole. For us, it will be the middle hole on each side, like so. That fits best in there. I'm going to flip it over and engage the locking nuts on this side. Now, this particular screwed connection does not require any thread locking agent. We are using nylock locking nuts, and those will lock the threads in place, and you don't need to worry about them. Now we'll need a 3mm Allen along with a 8mm open-ended or a box wrench. I'm going to use the open-ended here. Get these down snug. I'm not going to bottom them out all the way. I want to leave a little bit of adjustability in this system. All right, now some adjustability still left. I want to make sure that everything's level and center. As you can see, we're pretty good here, so I'm going to go ahead and lock those connections down. And now our hinge is still free to rotate. What I'm going to do is just lock it in this position for the moment. We'll unlock it later on after everything's installed and everything's on the bike, and adjust the license plate angle to its final version. Before we move on, just want to make sure everything looks good with the rest of the setup, and in fact it looks pretty good here, so let's move on. For the next set of steps, we're going to return to the bike and put our Fender Eliminator fender assembly back on the bike. Just make sure that these tabs interface with their proper windows, and then as you put that back up, we'll match these bosses to the frame and just get a screw through so that it's captured here and doesn't flop up and down. We'll take this back down one more time, so we don't want to have a permanent connection here. It's just much easier to work on this on the bike versus off. Now, next step will involve your license plate. What I like to do is get our actual signal brackets already on, and that requires that your license plate go on. So let's do that now. We'll be using one washer and one of the screws from the outside going through our license plate into the license plate bracket. On the back side, we'll place the slotted portion over that screw, and then using another same washer, cap that, and then we have a lock nut that goes over that connection. And for now, we'll just keep it pretty loose, just enough so that it keeps the license plate in place. We'll repeat this procedure on this side. Again, washer, screw, bracket with the slot on. Now, it's not really necessary to finalize this yet. We just need it in place so that we could get our wiring done and then move on. We'll grab our signals, whichever ones you chose from our website. Oh, they were the BL6s. If not, it's pretty much the same. But if you did choose the BL6s, I'll show you the configuration they need to be in. Left and right are different. We have our logo on the back side of them, so you want to make sure that the logo is upright and readable. And then you have this curved section up here. So this will be for the right side of the bike, and we will start with the right side. We'll sort of just leave this in a placeholder configuration. Just repeat the steps on the left side. All right, so now we have these wires sticking out of here. We're going to configure the OEM harness converter connection onto them. We will go yellow from the signal into brown of the converter, and also black from the signal to red on the converter, and the blue will remain disconnected. And now we have these little insulating sleeves over these connections. They do a good job of insulating the electrical connection, but they can actually slip off. So what I'm going to do is lock them in place with electrical tape, and that'll do the job. The wire, I like to just fold it over if it's unused and just capture it with the same tape. Also making sure that it is not exposed. Repeat procedure. Now we can actually get these wires down under through the grommet and the undertail by the section that we cut up. And at this point, you want to pick a routing that you're comfortable with. You could go over the L brackets under. I like to go under because less shows from the side and the back. Both sides go in. And then we're gonna just get this back here. And if this is all the equipment you're running, then you're good to proceed to next step. I'm actually going to wire in a license plate light. If you've chosen to wire in a license plate light, I'll show you how to do that in just a second. Now here we have the TST Industries low profile license plate light. If you're using this light in combination with this system, this will show you how to install it. First, I will get the wires down through the top and over and get my wires into the grommet. And once I pass them up to the top, this light will be self-captured up here and I won't have to worry about it too much. We do have a strip of double-side tape. It is up to you if you want to use it. I have never actually used it myself. I just use the clamping force in between the license plate and its bracket, and that is adequate. I'm going to loosen the connections holding the license plate and all this stuff on here. This will give us enough flex to get our license plate light seated and sandwiched, and we're going to get these connections tightened down again. I'm still only going hand tight. We'll finalize everything at the end of this procedure. All right, now all our wires up here and ready to be routed and captured with the guiding straps, cable management and whatnot. So we can do that now. They required those Phillips screws to come out. This is fairly simple. You just pass the wires through and get them clamped back down, making sure you have enough slack on both sides. This one's going to be a little bit more difficult. I don't have a lot of clearance here. Definitely can't show you guys too well, but I will be removing this again, so I'll show you how I did that. Now the key here is to make sure that you have enough slack while routing all the wires on the left side of this component here, and then lock down as much as you can with the screws. And then I'll hold it in place with some friction. Do that with both of these cable management guides. All right, it's looking pretty good here. So now I will just take out those screws that I had in for temporary holding and drop the fender down, demonstrate how I routed the wires, and then we'll get the top portion with the tail light on, and we can continue up the line and plug everything in. All right. I ran through both of these routing guides, made sure that I have enough slack, all is good, screwed down, ready to go. I'm gonna get those tabs back in up there, get my outer cover back in place. These wires will now have to go to the outside here. Pull this out again. Outside I meant in between this fastener and this boss. All right, now if we align this component with those 5 fasteners that we took out early in the disassembly, once they're aligned, we could start getting those in. Once all these are properly tight, we need to pass the wires that we have here, all of these wires, into the main compartment under the seat, and you basically have to get them back through the hole that they were routed through originally. If you did not memorize that, it's really tough for me to show you the hole using our camera setup, so I'll just demonstrate it this way. If you take a screwdriver, pass it along this way here, and if it could penetrate right under your seat latch, then you're using the right hole. So now I have all my wiring here in position. It is passed just under the seat latch cable to the left side of your fuse box here, and we are ready to raise our fender assembly here. And if those tabs on the front section of the fender assembly are in their proper position, as you hinge it up, you will have your holes aligned properly. We'll place the screws that we took out of there originally. Go by hand first. With the rear screws in place, this assembly is self-supporting, so just let it go and work up front here. We'll use a 5mm Allen here in this place. Get these things down as far as they'll go. And to properly tighten these, we will need another 5mm Allen from the bottom. And that's just in line on axis with this screw. Tighten them against each other. And that pair is done. Now this pair is done. Let's plug our wires in. First we'll do the big one, 3-position plug for the tail light. Then we'll need to figure out which signal is which. our converters have both the same color, and at this point there's no way of knowing which one's left, which one's right, so we just have to do it trial and error. So I have right turned on now and the right signal's flashing, so we made the right choice there. We got lucky. If you don't get lucky the first time, you can always just unplug them and reverse them and you're good to go. Now, what do we do about license plate light? On this particular bike, we have this plug. It's very similar to the signal plugs. On our setup, we have just wires with bare ends, and we've included these posi-tap connectors. These are really nice, but I do like to have an OEM plug on this particular bike. I would personally just snip off a part of the OEM wire that connects in here, that contains the plug, and wire this into that. But this is outside the scope of this video. I just wanted to show a quick demonstration. So I think we'll just keep it simple. This wire for the license plate light, you could either bundle it up or cut it, strip it. What I'm gonna do is just bundle it up. The wire that we took off from this license plate light, it's a little wire tie. I'm gonna reuse it here. Get it wrapped around nice and tight. And now we have a nice little bunch here, and we can wire into here. What I like to do is take off a little bit of that sheathing. Makes the installation a little bit easier. There's a larger end and a smaller end to this posi-tap connector. When you unscrew this component, you expose this slotted barrel looking component. Get that around the wire, and the opposite end has a little piercing element in it. We'll screw that back on, and that will pierce the wire and make our connection there. I'll repeat the procedure with this second connector just a little bit up the line. I do this because I don't like them parallel. I don't want them to be very bulky side to side. Now the smaller end can be turned out. Get our exposed wire through the larger end, through the smaller end cap. Make sure that some is protruding and get that turned in. Once you tighten that down, give it a little tug, make sure that it's captive. And in a second, we'll test it, make sure that the connection is made. Once you give the second connector a tug, and they're both captive in there, we'll make sure that we have, in fact, made the connection, and we have. So the wire configuration here is black on the OEM side to black, and the blue with a red trace to red. All right, so that will complete the connection procedure here. We just need to make sure that all the wire bulk is out of the way. Make sure that nothing will interfere with our tray here. This will need to stick back up to penetrate through the tray like so. Get back on that tab. And now we can get it back in place. It goes underneath these rubber components. And when you align these two, you can go ahead and put those shoulder screws back in. And the rest of this is really just a reverse order of this assembly. All right, guys, hang in there. We're almost done. This is the last step. You just need to configure everything back here to appropriate angles, tighten things down, and we're gonna be done. Good news is everything else on this bike is really easy to install. This is just unfortunate because Yamaha left us no choice with the one-piece fender. I'm just gonna get this situated at the angle I like. Obviously, you don't want it sitting straight down perpendicular to the ground. This is a very soft suspension on this bike. If it's just perpendicular, it will hit the tire, curl this whole system up, and you don't want that. So get it at an angle that is right for you, but make sure that you have enough gap between here. Lock it down, and let's move on to adjusting these screws here. Now you can move the signal inboard, outboard a little bit. That is up to you. I just like to make sure that they are symmetrical. What I really usually use as gauge is the flat bent back surface to be at the edge of my license plate. That looks pretty good. Lock this down by hand. Also need to ensure that my signals are parallel with the ground, and that is really a function of how I have angled that bracket. Once I figure out a good angle here, I can go ahead and tighten it all down with tools. That will involve a 10mm open-ended wrench from the backside. I think I got it pretty good here. I'm gonna go ahead and lock this down. All right, we're looking pretty good. Now, we need to make sure that our light beam is parallel to the ground and fires straight back. So the surface of the lens needs to be perfectly perpendicular to the ground. Once you've achieved that, use a 14mm open-ended wrench to tighten down on the nuts from the backside of those L brackets, making sure that you don't over tighten this connection, because that will result in ripping out of the over molded component from the rubber. You just need to preload this connection enough so that the rubber component causes enough pressure on the L bracket to stop it from rotating. And I think I have it pretty good here. My license plate light is in the center. It's clamped in place. Everything's looking symmetrical. Maybe not this one signal. There we go. That's good. Give it one last test and we'll be done. As you can see here, we're flashing a little bit faster than the OEM rate of 85 cycles per minute. That is due to changing our OEM incandescent light bulb signals to LED type that just draw much less current. To combat this, we do have an LED flasher relay that installs pretty simply on this bike. We have a separate video. I hope you guys will check that out. For now, I'll just throw the seat back on, and this will be the completed installation. Whew, and we're done. All right, this was a little bit of a process. I'm sure you guys agree, but well worth the effort. Look at this. It looks like it's supposed to look like from the factory, I feel, at least. I hope you guys agree with me. It's really nice and sleek, very simple and elegant, and doesn't break the pocket. It really is an affordable system to replace all that junk, and looks great. So if you guys do agree, check out tstindustries.com, where we can outfit you with these parts and other parts for this bike. See you there.